I've been working on the pillowcase, and it's coming along quite nicely. I really like it. It's a fun project. It's not too much embroidery. You know, sometimes you can just find yourself almost doing a chore as far as embroidery goes. But this one is light and airy. I had a lot of fun actually doing my uneven filled heart right there. I'm trying to get it where you can actually see there, maybe a little bit. It's weird how light and photography work. It's very strange. But anyway, I'm doing this part without a hoop because I don't want to destroy my heart. I should have saved it for last, and if I do this pattern again, I will save it for last. And that way I'm not, you know, risking having the hoop smash it and destroy it. I don't mind doing this by hand, but it would be a lot easier in a hoop. So, and if you've never done one of these, it's a iron-on Aunt Martha's, I think. They're both made by the same company. Colonial something. I'll go get them so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. So, yeah, this is the Aunt Martha's. This is this one right here. I chose not to put Prim Blessings on there, just use the design. And the other one out of here was the sheep, which it did not show that on the front. And that it's this one. And I sent that to my sister for her birthday. So I've done this one, or some of these. I've done some of the kitties. I've done some of the horses. I haven't done these yet, I don't think. These animals are so interesting to me. The pattern number is 3738. And what I loved about it, the reason that I purchased this one is the bangs on the dog. I just can't. Oh, okay. And then this one as well. So anyway, they're just fun little projects that you can pick and choose from. You know, I did this one for my kitchen, and I have some others on here that I'll probably end up doing. And I vary the amount of floss. For example, this I did with full 6 strands, and these little blueberries I'm doing with 6 strands. Everything else so far has been 3. Oh, this little heart and these berries, of course, are just full on 6 strand embroidery floss. Now, one of the best things that you can do prior to doing an embroidery project like this is iron your floss. So I used to have a class when I had my shop where we would I'll just explain. We would unwind the entire skein of floss. You know, I know a lot of people don't handle these snarls very well. There's nothing wrong with admitting that that's, you know, difficult. They're tedious, they're hard to undo sometimes. I happen to enjoy it. It's something I don't mind fiddling with. That is quite satisfying to me to get that to work like that. But anyway, so then I would just have a big bowl of hot water, and I would put the end of my floss in the hot water, and I would just throw this in to the hot water, making sure that I don't have any knots in my right hand. Just throw that in like so, and then pull it out. And in this hand I would have a terry cloth towel, and I would just be wiping it off drying it off like so. Put my iron on it and then just pull this through under the iron. Not this quickly. I would, kind of slow down a little bit, and then it would help to dry it and flatten it out. And that's what you want. You want your floss to be flat. Yesterday I was talking about a process of preparing your floss. So I'm going to go ahead and do that today, just because I thought, why not? This right here in this bowl is very hot water. It's about 180 degrees. But there is steam. And my iron is preheating. Right, and I'm going to lift out. I might have to use my tweezers. Once you have a free end, I'm going to turn off the iTouch on my iron and just set it down, and then pull my floss. It's dry, and now it is flat, and it feels different. I don't know if you would be able to determine a difference in your floss. I still feel a couple wet spots, so my plan is to have it looped like so. And I'll just press it flat. Like so. And it's dry, yeah. But there is definitely a difference in this and what I've been using. This has not, of course, been treated. I might just press it with the iron. I still have not received the jelly roll that I ordered for this project right here. This is the lining that I ordered to go with this. And I may end up just having to, purchase something else that would look as good with this as I had hoped the original one would look. And I've sort of been kicking around the idea of using one of the two spoonflower fabrics that I purchased to do another June Taylor project. There's another Quilt As You Go project that will make 6 placemats, and that's an option for me. I would probably end up having to cut that fabric into strips, and I don't know if I would have enough. I haven't looked at the requirements because I don't own that pattern yet. This one requires a large number of 2.5 by 42-inch strips. You'd need 20, and I don't think I could get 20. So I may start working on this. If you recall, the Master Fab fabric that I purchased for this pattern arrived last week. I think what I'll do is just go ahead and take the time to cut out my pattern pieces. I love how thick and heavy this pattern paper is. I'm going to need pieces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Piece 2 is optional, which would be the pocket. It's right there. And of course 8 is the buttonhole guide. Does your fusible interfacing look like this? You just got like shreds. That's okay because it's fusible interfacing. So, simple as pie. We can use bits and pieces of this on our cuff and collar. I think the cuff requires it, but the collar I know does. Piece number 4. And front facing. So we're going to need 2 front facing pieces interfaced. Now I do have more interfacing, so I'll probably end up using a different batch of this for my long front facing since I need 2. But for my collar, and let me double check the cuff while it'll have it on here. This one requires 2, and this one I will need to cut 1 on the fold of the interfacing. So I believe I have plenty, and of course you can still piece that as well. So if I didn't have enough for this to be, which apparently I don't, to be placed on the fold, I can piece this on here, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so if we look at our pattern cutting layout with information, the shaded pattern pieces, so 1, 4, and 3, are to be placed on the fabric, printed side down, like so. got those two pieces cut out. So on our pattern piece, it says cut 2 on the fold of the fabric. We've done that. And then it says cut 1 on the fold of the interfacing. Chances are pretty good that I'm not going to be able to cut one solid piece from my interfacing. So rather than drive myself crazy, I am just going to go ahead. Now I know the interfacing would be placed on the wrong side of my fabric. One thing I wanted to mention that occurred to me, this is almost a stripe. It is almost a fabric that you would have to be especially careful in cutting out. The only reason that I'm not really worrying about it too much is the design is small enough and there is like a shadow design that kind of makes it appear random. But if you have a print that, like a stripe or a plaid or checks or even, you know, polka dots to a certain extent that you have to match, then you would need to cut out each piece individually and fussy cut each piece. Like line this up with the white stripe or the white line or whatever, and then make sure that it's exactly lined up that same way for the second piece. This, like I said, this is small enough that I'm kind of treating it almost like dotted Swiss or something along those lines. And I'm not going to stress myself out too terribly much about whether or not this sleeve matches this sleeve. One thing I do need to double check though is I need to, yes, this is correct. Okay. All right. So I'll be back in a few minutes. All of the pieces have been cut. So I am now going to take that blue friction pen. It is heat erase ink, which isn't 100% erased. It will come back if it reaches cool temperatures. So if you're out, you know, in cool weather and you have marked whatever garment you have made on the right side of your fabric, you may see some what they call ghost lines, and that is the actual ink that was used. Generally speaking, I believe it's a gel ink like you would get in a gel pen that they have attached the thermo ink to make it flow. And so when you hit the ink that does erase with heat with an iron or something, that's the ink that disappears, but there is that residual gel ink left behind, and often it just looks like a white line or circle or whatever you've drawn. So be careful when you use this. You could use chalk I'm just going to go ahead and mark inside my seam allowances. I'm not going to be marking anything out in the garment that would then be visible. And the next thing I want to do is just lay these out like so. And I'm going to go over my instructions. I want to see if I have any surprises. The only thing I know I don't have at the moment are buttons, and I've not been able to find buttons that I would like to use yet. So once I have figured out the button situation, I don't think I have buttons in this house that I would want to use even on a shirt that I could repurpose. The buttonhole guide, I think the buttons are 5/8, is that right? I need 6. I took a picture of the wrong thing, but that's right. So I need 6 5/8 of an inch buttons. If I see buttons that I like, I want to know, if there's a measurement issue that I'm not familiar with. Okay, so let's see. First things first. I think the very first thing is to stay stitch, and then we're going to do the pocket, which I'm not doing, so I can skip the whole pocket thing. And then it skips to view B, where you're going to be putting the braid or the lace trim. Not doing braid or lace trim. So it's stay stitch, and then stitch down to where we do the fusible interfacing to the wrong side of the collar. We're going to take care of putting the collar together. So stay stitch, put collar together, and then move into applying the collar and the facing to the front of the shirt. And then after that we do the finish up on the collar, and we attach the sleeve, and then we press up the hem on the sleeve. Now, I mean, as you see, I think we're at 4 steps. That's hardly anything at all. So we press up the bottom edge of view A, then we pin the buttonhole guide to the front. It tells us how to make this little vent. So step 26, turn facing to the inside, press up the hem along the marking, press under 1/4 inch on the raw edge. That's that right there. They're just telling us to stitch square up to stitching above the opening and then stitch back down. And then after that we've hemmed it, we've put the buttonholes in. Everything is done except putting the buttons on. So it's a really quick top, and I think it's a great one for beginners. Alright, so next is re-threading my sewing machine. Remember, I purchased this thread. It's Gutermann. It's 100% polyester, and I really like it. It works well in my sewing machine, George. I also feel like it goes well, the color. Let me find a piece of I think these are a good match. And while I like this thread, it's just too weak. Okay, so I wasn't able to find the metal bar seam guide that I have, but I do have this one right here that fits onto my table. So I'll show you how, if you have one and you weren't sure, how to make that work, I'll show you how. There is a trick. Let me move George out of the way just a little bit. Okay. So this is the actual guide, and it is a removable piece. And then there's that red marker in there that will line up with the numbers on your table. So you can't just stick it. It just doesn't work like that. There is a guide right along the edge of your table here, and there are some little guides along the lower edge of, let me grab something to point with, hold on. Okay. So right there is that little raised piece of plastic right there, and there's one on the other side right there and right there. So what you want to do is you want it to look like this when it's properly installed. So flip your table over and look for this little edge right there, right here. Not this one with this part, but this right here. And then you're going to take this and sort of feed that little guide right on. Every single time I'm doing something fiddly, my phone beeps. It's so weird. Okay, so I don't know if this is even showing up, but you're going to kind of feed it on like so, and this one will follow this one once you get it properly aligned. And that makes it easy to move, and it won't come off. It won't just slip off. I mean, you saw it was kind of, you know, it was not difficult, but a little fiddly to get it on, to put that on there. Okay. Now here's the tricky part. You need to get this up here in order to get your table on here. In other words, if this is down here, you can't put your table on. So you need to slide it up to the table-y part, pop your table on, and then this should just slide right underneath your foot like so. So like that. And now you can kind of mark, you know, where your seam allowance needs to be. Use this right here, this red mark right here, to properly place the guide like so. And because it reaches all the way across the throat plate, it will help guide your fabric, you know, in that area that it needs to be. So figure out where you want your seam allowance to be and line it up, and it will stay. It's pretty, you know, strongly attached right there. And then you can just butt your fabric right up next to that and stitch along. Okay. Now I don't know if they still make this system. There are a number of seam guides out on the market that I have seen that I think would work with any number of sewing machines. This just happened to come with this table. Okay, so on my sewing machine, and it might be true, I just looked online to see what a few of the others were, but on mine it is the third line in. I don't know why I was second guessing myself. I just, all of a sudden I was looking at everybody else's sewing machines, and it just occurred to me that, maybe I don't know. But it is the third line, and it's the first long line that crosses this horizontal. So this horizontal line right here that runs across, let me get you where you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, this line right here cuts these off. So I have this first line here, this second line here, this third line crosses over this horizontal line, and that first line that crosses over, or the third line past the foot, is 5/8 on my sewing machine. So I'm just going to slide this bar right over to that line right there. So So it says to stay stitch the front and the back neck edges a 1/2 inch from the cut edge in the direction of the arrows. And that's important because you will see right here, we're going to go into the center and then stop, and then go into the center and then stop. And on each of the front sections, we're going to go from the shoulder to the front edge. So that's stay stitching at a 1/2 inch from the cut edge. So I need to slide this over to here. The cut edge is right there. Okay. Thing on the two front pieces, going from the shoulder to the neck edge. Now the thing about this step is we need to remember we're going to be attaching our two front pieces to the back piece right sides together. That's how that works. So I will have the back piece facing me like so. I'm going to trim out these threads from the stay stitching. They don't need to stay in. Okay. Alright, so I've got the right sides up. Now I will take the correct piece and attach it to the correct side. So this is the front, this is the shoulder, this is the neck edge, this is the front edge of the front piece. So I will attach it like so, matching up these notches right here. And pin. If you prefer not to pin, you can. If you prefer to use clips, you can do that. However works for you. I like to go ahead and pin when I need to. Okay, so there's this side attached. Now one thing to remember is this is going to stretch if you pull on it. This neck edge right here and this neck edge right here. That is why we had to do the stay stitching, to kind of prevent any damage to the neck area. Okay, same thing on this side. I will match those two notches, pin across the top, and then stitch using 5/8 of an inch. Now, if you are concerned in your sewing, especially if you're sewing for a very active person, you know, a child, an active adult, a teenager, whatever, you can stitch that line twice for stability. Okay, my pins are going to be in the way. of this seam guide. That's a drawback right there. I can't even get to it, so I will have to pin like way down here to be able to access this area up here. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not intuitive. And locking stitches. Now I don't have to cut that thread. I can just pick this up like so, and I'm going to push these pins down. The next step is to start working on the collar. We'll see, we got to find the instructions. It looks like it starts at number 7. Pin fusible interfacing to the wrong side of the collar. Cut diagonally across the corners that will be enclosed with seams. So these points don't need interfacing, but my interfacing is very lightweight and it will actually give it a little bit better stability. I don't mind having that extra oomph, but as you can see, if you have a little bit heavier interfacing, you might want to not attach it to these points. Next step is machine stitch 5/8 of an inch from the notched edge, that's the notched edge of the collar. Clip notched edge of collar to small dots. So anytime anything says notched edge, they mean the edge that has the notches. So you don't have to worry that you're getting that correct or incorrect. Oh, I need to put my machine and needle down. Okay, well, let's get that piece number 4 for it's the front facing, and here is the collar. It was piece number 4. Okay. So evidently there are some dots that I do need because I'll be clipping the collar piece to the dots. So I'm just going to line up this piece right here in the center, and I'm going to use my notch right here. Make sure that that's all lined up like it's supposed to be, and then take my friction ink and on the wrong side mark the dot right here. And I'm going to flip it over and do the exact same thing on the other side. Match the notch and the point of the collar and mark the dot. And I'm just folding the dot in half and marking right on top of where that would be. Okay. And then you just want to fold your pattern piece so that the number is visible, like so. Stitch the facing to the collar, leaving, okay, yeah. Alright, so we put these pieces, now that we've done that part, I am supposed to clip to this dot on both sides. So with my scissors, I'm just going to clip without cutting through the thread just right up to those little dots. I'm going to flip this around so that it's right side together, and then I'm going to, or right side together, right side facing up, and then I'm going to put this piece on top of that with the right sides together, like so. And I'm going to pin it where I have clipped to the stitching. I don't want to, I'm just going to pin this. So that gets folded down like so. And I'm just going to keep that pinned. Okay, so then with right sides together, stitch the facing to the collar, leaving this notched edge area open. Trim my threads. And there's a lot of trimming. Alright, and don't forget to press under that 1/4 of an inch along this edge right here. Okay, so there's the collar, and the next thing we're going to do is on step number 10. We're supposed to be, if we're doing view B, we'll be pinning the midi braid or the edge, which we're not doing. So we're going to go ahead and move into step 11, which is to clip the neck edge of the garment to our stay stitching. And that would just be a series of stitches, or clips, I mean. Where am I? Oh, here I am. Tiny sewing space will drive you crazy. Alright, so wherever there is a curve, I'm not going to clip here, I don't need to, but here I do. So as I'm going, I'm looking for curves because I want it to be able to move, to open up, and it won't if I don't release some of the tension in the fabric and cut through the cross grain and the straight grain. Okay, and then again here, just where there is a curve. And if you don't cut to the stitching line, it won't open up the way it should. So by open up, I mean this is a curve along this neck edge, and to open up, I want it to lay flat like this. It won't do that without these little snips made up to my stay stitching line. Again. Okay, so after we get this neck edge of the garment clipped, we are going to pin the facing side of the collar to the neck edge of the garment. Okay, so the notched edge is the facing side, and we're going to match up the notches on the collar to the notches on the garment. They don't say that in the instructions. That might be something that you would want to know about. Okay, so notches to notches. And okay. All right, once you get it pinned, I literally had no idea how late it was. It's already 2:30. I've just been fiddling around and fiddling around. As much as I wanted to get this done in a day, it is literally, it is totally doable in a day. It's just that I've been planting bulbs and soaking bulbs and watering and fertilizing plants, and unfortunately, when the weather in the Pacific Northwest is warmish, 42, 43 degrees, and the sun is out, I tend to have to take advantage of that. So I've been in and out of the house, in and out of the house, and that's why this is not done.